Alrighty, we will just go ahead and get started. This will be recorded just for us to be able to share out through any communication or family portals, just in case people who missed it might need to review. But we'll start with just some quick introductions and then we'll turn it over to Denisha, our lovely representative over in financial aid. But I am Cody Green. I'm the Associate Director for Residence Life and Housing. I am a part of the onboarding committee. So what that is a committee created of a few campus partners with admissions, new student orientation, first year experience. And we kind of work together to help create events like this for incoming students and families. So at the end, Denise, if you have any housing related questions, feel free to ask. I can also answer those. But most importantly, we are here to kind of cover some financial aid information and best ways that your student can be successful through the financial aid office. So, Denisha, I will turn it over to you for intro and you can take it away.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining. Again, my name is Denisha Newby. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at William Peace University. So hopefully this presentation is a little bit different than others. So if you have sat in another presentation, but this will give you some tips about those next steps and what you need to do, and kind of hopefully some tips about doing that and what to look forward to. So I do always like to start off, what exactly is financial aid? Um, and it's really anything that you use to help pay for college. And so the financial aid office has to basically gather all that information from whatever source. So whether it's scholarships from the institution, university, or outside scholarship from the local Kiwanis Club or whatever, whether it's federal, state, or institutional aid. So financial aid is the big umbrella. And so we try to get students as close to their cost, whether it's direct cost, and we'll talk about that in a second. So that's the whole reason why we kind of gather all that information so that we know and can get them close to what they actually need. The federal government requires that every institution comes up with a cost of attendance or cost of education. So this is why many times if you looked at your offer information on PacerNet, it looks a little different, possibly like, what are those extra fees, or what is that? And this is not your bill. This is the estimated cost of attendance that the federal government requires every institution to come up with, so families know how to compare institutions apples to what to expect, right? And some of them are direct costs that you're actually going to receive a bill for. So that's tuition, campus fees. If your student is staying on campus, that's their room board charge. The indirect costs that we have to take account for is things like books and supplies. Of course, our books are included, but there are some supplies that your student might need, right? But again, this is not billed to you. So when you're thinking about, okay, how much do I actually have to come up with or we need to meet, you don't necessarily need to keep those indirect costs in mind, but we just want you to know that we have accounted for that. So let's say you get outside scholarships or whatever that is, you just can't go over that full cost of attendance. So not just the direct cost, but the cost of attendance. So an example of that is the estimated cost of attendance for this coming year. We estimate tuition and fees, and this is for an academic year, to be about $33,000. If your student is staying on campus with residence hall and meals, it's about $12,000 again for the year. There can be some variation based on the room type, what meal plan they choose. And this is just kind of give us in the ballpark. So the total direct cost, what you would actually receive a bill for, half for fall, half for spring, if all these parameters met with your family, is about $48,000. Again, when we estimated the aid, we had to take that indirect cost into consideration as well. So maybe you had other aid or parent loans or all that stuff up to $52,000. So that's kind of where that gap is coming in at. Now, of course, if your student is not staying on campus, then they're not going to be billed that on campus housing and meals. They sign a contract, all those things. So, but we do estimate that cost in there. So again, you have to tailor your estimation for your planning purpose to what you and your family actually need. So so there's a couple ways of hopefully covering some of those costs, right? So hopefully right by now you received the offer letter, but also just think about other ways that you and your family can look for additional aid to help you during this time. So I highly stress scholarships. That's something that your student can apply for not only now as a new incoming student, but as they become a sophomore, junior, or senior in college. I tell the story all the time that my son received a scholarship when he was a junior because that entity wanted to know that he was more invested in his college career. So they kind of didn't, it wasn't just like a new incoming freshman thing. So different scholarships have different parameters. So continue to look for those. So not only on top of the institutional scholarships you receive, research things that are in your community. You know, are you a member of a faith-based organization? Are there fraternal organizations, Masonic organizations, VFWs, places like that that gives different types of scholarships? A lot of times families have told me their guidance counselor, senior counselor had some type of list or board or something like that that they listed scholarships in. Does your local PTA or PTO have scholarships? Think about civic organizations. You don't have to be a member of those organizations to receive those scholarships. North Carolina has a very robust website with scholarship opportunities. If you're not a resident of North Carolina, every state, larger city has some type of foundation, scholarship foundation, something like that. So kind of look community foundation, look that up and see if they have scholarship opportunities for you. Generally, it begins in the fall and spring of the year preceding the student starting. But like I said, this is something that your student and your family can look forward to throughout their student's college career and even grad school, to be honest. So keep it going. When another source that students and families use are grants, and most of the grants are awarded automatically by that family doing the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. So you've heard like the Pell Grant or SEOG or those types of things, North Carolina Need-Based Grant. So those are different types of grants, and generally that is based on that FAFSA information, and it can vary from nothing to 3, 4, 5, 6, $7,000 for the academic year. And so that's individual to that family. Then, of course, if there is a gap that we perceive, so again, that cost of attendance, that larger $52,000 minus all the aid that we know about, we're going to offer that difference in loans. So the student as a first year generally student, they're eligible generally for up to $5,500. And it could be a combination of subsidized, which is interest free while the student's in school, and unsubsidized that gains interest while they're in school. Neither one of those loans have to be paid back until 6 months after the student stops going to school or graduate. Then if there's still a perceived gap by what we know, we would then offer a parent loan. And the parent loan is in the parent name. It is credit based. The parent has to apply for that. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But if the parent does not want to do the parent loan or do a partial loan, you can also do a private loan through an outside lender. And again, I'll show you that link for that. Sometimes reasons people choose the federal loans over private loans is maybe there's a fixed interest rate. Some people feel it's lower. Again, but I do suggest you do your research and find out what's your best solution. And again, we don't know what other resources or scholarships that you already have in place, you know, and we'll talk about that. So again, the parent loan and the private loan, really, with the parent loan on your offer notification is really just a placeholder saying what we estimate that number to be. How you choose to move forward with that is kind of up to you. Also, with the parent loans, if for some reason the parent is denied for that loan, then the student can be considered for an additional loan in their name for up to $4,000. The parent can also get a co-signer for that. So again, it's kind of up to the family how they choose to use that. And again, these are just options. And if you need to have that individual conversation, we certainly have that opportunity to do that. If you wanted to see, and hopefully you and your family have already looked, your actual offer notification, you can see that on your student's PacerNet. They would go out to self-service to see that. And then from there, their financial aid offer, this is the cover letter kind of that. A couple things I do want to point out when you're looking at this screen is it lists like the information that the student has already completed, such as the FAFSA form, and then it says other things to do. And we'll kind of get into the entrance counseling, the master promissory note, but also notice these resources here on the side. These are all hyperlinks, again, that your student has access to. One thing I do want to point out too is if you were a resident of North Carolina and you did receive the North Carolina Need-Based Scholarship, we did send an email, but it is required that the student does a residency determination application. And so I don't think that's quite available yet, but usually after June 1 or so, that will be available for next academic year. These are also other hyperlinks for you to look into information about, the parent loan, the private loan, and things like that. So when you go further and click review or accept your financial aid package, this is where it brings up the actual detail about your student's account. So I feel like do a good job of breaking up what scholarships and grants, so money that you do not have to pay back versus the loan options. And then at that bottom, the next steps, which is the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, which is required for the student if they are choosing to take out their student loans in their name. Do note your student does have to accept their federal loan. So they don't have to accept them at this point in time. They can accept the offer letter and not accept that technical Stafford subsidized and unsubsidized loan. And that's totally fine because we know that, you might not know yet all the aid that you're eligible for. Maybe you're waiting to that senior banquet and they'll announce, oh, your student got this scholarship. So sometimes families don't know until the end of May sometimes about other opportunities, and that is totally fine. Do also know that on the parent loan, the student cannot accept the parent loan. So we don't want the student going out there and accepting a loan on the parent's behalf. There's other steps to do that. Again, this is a placeholder just to say that number that we think additional funds are needed. And we'll go over where exactly and how to apply for those other types of loans. So again, when you're calculating your costs, you need to think about what your actual costs are. So if it's the tuition and fees plus housing, you know what you requested and maybe closer to what your actual number is. And again, it's that direct cost that you really need to kind of budget for. Again, if your student is a commuter, then they are just going to pay that tuition and fees and not pay the housing and meal amount. So you would take that number, right, minus the aid that you saw under scholarships and grants and came up with your subtotal amount. Then if you do choose to take those loans, you would again subtract that number and come up with your balance. This is for the academic year. So that means half would be due for fall and half due for spring. And the bill generally is about the same for fall and spring. The bill for fall is going to come out in June. Generally, the student accounts office does mail that out to the family, and it's available online. And I believe they email that information as well. So it's going to have your family's exact numbers, your tuition, your fees, your housing if a contract was signed, and then your aid should show on there as estimated aid as well. And don't be alarmed that it says estimated or pending. It's because classes haven't started. So technically, we can't disperse aid until your student is actually in the seat, right? But just making sure that you actually, or your student, because it's your student's responsibility to complete those steps, have done what they need to do to accept whatever aid that they are looking to have. So some of the questions that I get a lot is how do families cover some of those out-of-pocket costs? I highly encourage students, at this time of year, if they have a summer job or they receive, let's say, things, kind of save that money up to kind of help. Constantly apply for those outside scholarships. If there's tuition reimbursement or benefits, either from parents, employers, students, whatever, making sure you kind of research that information so that you know once you get your bill or what is needed to submit, to get that reimbursement. Same thing with the 529. If you have a 529 plan, knowing, setting that account up, knowing, what they require and having that information to be kind of ready to say, okay, we're ready to move forward with this. If you're going to take the federal loans, kind of determining, what your family's needs are, if you're going to move forward with a parent loan or private loan, or if you're going to do a combination of them all, and that's totally fine as well. Maybe some families are like, we want our 529 to last all 4 years. So we're only going to take a fourth of it. We're going to supplement it by our personal income and partially student loans. Again, however your family chooses to navigate this process is the right solution for your family. So sometimes families do ask as well about employment opportunities. So that first week of classes, usually there's different fairs that go on, and then departments and areas that are hiring, they have information out there for student employment. There's also opportunities for federal work study. So work study and student employment are very similar. The students tend to do the same types of jobs. The main difference is just where the funds come from. So work study is limited. It is a need-based award. We usually have a sign-up sheet for students to request that. And again, that comes out that first week of classes. But there are tons of employment opportunities on campus in different departments, whether it's a library, whether it's in our admissions office. There's tons of areas for students to have, a part-time job on campus if that is your family's option and pleasure. So again, thinking about those next steps, we kind of went over the list, but again, thinking about what needs to be done. If your student is deciding to move forward with the federal loans or the parent loans or whatever that is, the student does have to accept the loan on their PacerNet. So that loan is not automatically going to go on the bill just because we offered it. Families like, I want to reject it, I want to take it off. That's totally fine. The student can accept or decline it as well, but knowing that the student actually has to accept it and complete the other steps for that loan to actually pay out in their name on the bill. Again, the stuff for subsidized and unsubsidized loan is in the student's name, and the student does have to accept it and complete, again, that master promissory note and entrance counseling. And again, on here, it does say kind of what that this student's case does not have. So when the student clicks, it says accept or decline. So again, the student can accept a lower amount. And like I stated before, the parent loan, the student cannot accept in that parent's name. There's other processes for that. In order to actually do the federal Stafford loan in the student's name, the student would have to go out to studentaid.gov after they've accepted it on PacerNet and complete both the master promissory note and the entrance counseling. One thing I do want to caution or make you aware of is in this top right-hand corner here, it's going to say, hi, Denisha, hi, Tommy, hi, whatever. So making sure that you're logged in with the correct FSA ID and password. So the student needs to log in with their FAFSA ID and password and complete their master promissory note and entrance counseling for it to actually link to that Stafford loan in their name. The same with if the parent does the parent loan, this needs to say up here, hi, mom, dad's name, and then the parent would log in and complete the PLUS application and the master promissory note for the parent PLUS loan. Again, that's your electronic signature saying that you are the person actually applying for this. So again, it's something that is tied to that ID. And so sometimes I have had families not quite pay attention to that or kind of think it's all the same and sign it with the opposite person. So just kind of be aware of that because they'll never link and it won't pay. So just kind of be aware of that. And then usually you can log back in and even look at what you signed and look at your forms in case you're questioning whether you actually did that or not. And it's going to say student, it's going to say borrower, it's going to say those things. I do like to also bring up that while students are in college or starting this process, sometimes life happens, right? Where things happen. And the FAFSA does use like maybe a year, year and a half back of tax information. So if there's a special circumstance or a significant financial change, be sure to contact the financial aid office. And this is any time in that student's career. And we would talk through that situation, and we might be able to do a special circumstance appeal, which could result in additional, especially federal and state aid on that student's behalf. Because we know the merit aid has no need involved. But let's say, unfortunately, there is a divorce or death of a parent, or loss of employment or something of that nature. Sometimes, with all these natural disasters and things going on, sometimes you take in additional family members, and the income's the same, but it's spreading a little bit more. So, again, if you have a significant financial change, contact our office. We have a link actually that you would do it, but I don't want you to go through the process of submitting all these forms and taxes and all that stuff for it not to make a difference in that financial aid package. And there's times where maybe it doesn't make a change for this year, but we know make a change for next year. There might be you need a bit more documentation, so we can kind of walk you through that before you go through those steps. So this is something that is offered and available each year if there is a change. So let's say there is a change, be sure you do the FAFSA form, use the information that they actually asked for, and then we can change the information on the back end. So as we kind of wrap up, just kind of some of my tips for success is to complete the FAFSA form each and every year. Even if you choose not to activate all the parts of it, it's a lot easier to activated, let's say, if something were to drastically change, then to start all over and do the form and that type of thing. So it's great to kind of have it there, just in case you do choose to use it. And what you do one year, you might not do another. Continue to have your student apply for different outside scholarships. Once your student is here, we will have a monthly newsletter. We stopped it for this year, just because we were ending the year. So we'll start that afresh in August or September, and we have a monthly newsletter. We tell about outside scholarship opportunities and sometimes internal ones that we know about as well. I highly, highly suggest that families have a conversation. So parents have a conversation with your student have a conversation with your parent about the financial expectations. Is grandma going to pay for housing? Is the expectation that you work over the summer and save the money so that you can do the payment plan? Is a parent willing to co-sign or they're not? So kind of have that conversation so that you're not in my office in August looking at each other because that conversation wasn't had. And there was certain assumptions made that the other party wasn't quite aware of. And please, students, parents, remind your student to kind of continue to check their piece email often. There's information that's sensitive that we're not going to send to their regular email, because we know who's checking that piece email account. So making sure that they're actually checking it and responding to that. And I'd say kind of have your plan in place by June. What is your plan for finalizing the financial, bill and how you're going to be able to take care of that? Because again, that bill comes out in June, and that payment deadline, we have a 5-month payment plan that starts in July. So definitely you want to kind of have whatever in place. If you're not going to do the payment plan, that's totally fine. Maybe you're going to do the private loan or the parent loan, or you have some savings. So kind of have that in place and know what your plan is as a family. And deadlines are key. For instance, in North Carolina need-based, you have to have that application in within 45 days. So again, we're going to send you reminders or the student reminders of these things and making sure that they are up on that reminder, because we don't want them to lose opportunities because they missed a deadline. And then once classes start, be sure you do a FERPA form, the Family Rights and Privacy Act, because this is the student's account. So unless you're the student, we can't give you detailed information. So it's a little bit different than before where everything will come to the parent and, you would disseminate it. This is the student's account. There's federal regulations about what every office on campus can release. And it just makes it a lot easier if we know for sure who that person, that student says we can speak to, because there's a lot of different family dynamics, people, trusted partners of that student, people they don't want to have information. So we want to make sure in writing that that student actually has that FERPA on file. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm not sure if there's any questions. Um, yeah, so I know it's a lot of information. And if not, we always can be reached individually, my email. We do have the You Can Book Me link out there that admissions had been sending out. That is still active. It's 45 minutes one-on-one sessions. If you have questions about that, you can certainly email us and say, hey, I want to set up the personalized financial consultation, and we can do that. And we're doing those through, I believe, July. So we're a lot of evenings. There are some weekdays, mostly on Fridays, that we have those sessions set up. But we're here to help. We know there's still a lot of unknown right now, but we definitely just want to be a resource for you in case you did have questions.
Okay, question for so the students will register in May, and then we'll get a partial bill for half the year to start paying in July, or will it have to be due all in July if we don't do the payment plan?
So the bill will be for the semester. So it will be, so once the student's registering, it'll be that first semester's bill. So whether you do the payment plan or not, that bill will come out in June. So if you do want to activate the payment plan, that first payment will be due in July. So it'll be July, August, September, October, November, that 5 months. If, let's say, you've already done or going to do the private loan or the parent loan, then those will start to show up closer to in that July time. So that's when you'll see it on there, because there are some day requirements and stuff like that, but you'll see that on there as pending aid, especially online. So if he's like, oh, I just did the application last week, but the bill is here this week, it might not have time to make that paper bill, but if you look online, you'll see those pending aid on there. So you definitely, and that's why I said kind of have in mind about that June, because those like the private loan does take a little bit longer because it's a banking loan. And so there's federal requirements about a wait period and cancellation and things like that. So you definitely want to give all those things a couple weeks to kind of process and get on the bill, so that when the student does start classes or move in and all that stuff, there's no hiccups.
Okay. When will the spring be available? When will the spring start for payment plans?
December.
Okay.
So I believe students tend to register in November, October, November, depending upon it's staggered, right? Based on their ranking. And then again, those bills will be generally, and they're going to be much quicker online, that you can see it and make that payment online, to be honest. But yeah, that December 5 month, that spring's 5 months is December, January, February, March, and April.
Okay. And the $33,055 that you were showing for tuition and fees, is that for the 25-26 year? Because on our financial aid, it's got $34,530 for the tuition.
34,530.
So I didn't know if there had been a change in tuition for 25-26, or.
When you get your so these are estimations, right?
Okay.
So kind of what part we're pulling at, so if it has the fees in there or not, but when you get your actual bill, it will have the actual number. Okay. So it's right in that ballpark. So I'm not sure, because I thought I did pull the actual fee structure off of what I was given, but I know it's in that ballpark.
Okay,
So, yeah.
sounds good.
But
Okay,
when you get your actual bill, so my numbers are kind of estimations, to be honest, but they're very they should be very close, within a little bit of error.
and if we decided to like update the meal plan, considering what she has already chosen, we can do that prior to starting the payment in June, July? Or will she have to stick with the one that she chose?
No, you can do meal plan updates. Our office typically, we manage all of that because you do it through the housing application.
Yes.
So you can email us if there's needs to be an update made to that. We also typically, in years past, I don't oversee the meal plan portion, but in years past, we have sent out to all incoming students like a meal plan update form that they can fill out and change that meal plan. I believe it just has to be updated before like drop add, because that's when we do like our final number. Refunds aren't given back by that drop add deadline. So we like to have everything taken care of. So even in that like first week that students are here, first week and a half, if they feel like they need to change a meal plan, they can let us know. We can get that changed through with student accounts. But once that drop add deadline comes, that's what the rate will be, and that's what the student will be charged for the semester. Then we do have an option, like if they're doing the unlimited meal plan this semester and they realize it's too much, for next semester we do a meal plan change form for the spring semester, and same goes with there by that drop add deadline in the spring. It just needs to be updated by then.
And
Do
let's
you,
say you signed up for the payment plan, then they will, the student council recalculate your amount. So let's say it went up a little bit or down a little bit, or you got an outside scholarship, it's gonna keep recalculating. So it's gonna say, okay, you have 3 payments left. This is the amount due divided by 3.
okay,
So let's say you went up or down, it'll recalculate. Oh, great, we got this scholarship. It went, all the way down. We can, so yes.
okay, okay. That sounds good. Okay. Um, she's applied for several scholarships and she's been declined for those as well. So we're still waiting on some additional ones for that to see if she gets awarded them or not. So, and I do have another question about the housing as well. It slipped my mind. Oh, since they have the suite bathrooms, will they be required to provide their own toilet paper and cleaning of the bathrooms as well?
Yes.
Okay. I just
Yep.
want to make sure. I thought so, but I just.
Yeah. It is the only places will be for like upperclassmen students. Main hall is a community style bath. They do provide toilet paper in there, and then do some general like weekly cleaning of that community since it's a hall bath. But all of our first year areas are suite style, so that is up to the student suite mate's responsibility to provide that and keep that clean.
Okay. And then we'll find out closer to time which residence hall she'll be in.
Yes, the goal is to have that out in like late June. So that way you have some time in July to communicate with roommates, decide who's going to bring what, if you want to bring 2 of something, and do all that fun jazz. But that'll be all included in the housing assignment email.
Okay. And if she chose originally a random roommate, but she's coming to Peace to play basketball with Annalie, for her, she's got her connected with another freshman that's coming. Is there a way to update the request for the roommate instead of doing a random?
Yeah, if you the students, we just ask that they request each other, so they can always email our office. It's residencelife@peace.edu. and just say, hey, I've met a roommate, and I'd like to update my housing request, we can go in and just make that update.
Okay, all right. Because we saw Anna Lee on Friday, or like one Friday, and she got her in contact with someone that she felt like that's coming to the team, that they would be compatible. So they've been talking this week. So I guess over time, depending on, hopefully by the end of April, they'll decide if they want to room with each other or not to get that email sent.
Yeah. And also if the student, if the other student hasn't completed their housing application, they can request your student, and then your student would just send us an email saying like, hey, this student has requested me as a roommate. I am confirming I would like to live with this student. Can you please, make the adjustment on my housing application?
Okay.
We just ask that there's kind of that mutual consent from both of them before we just slap
Put 'em
two people
together.
together. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And they can have a mini fridge. And that's the only thing that they can have in their room is the mini fridge.
Yeah, they can have a mini fridge and anything that has like a kickoff switch. It's like a coffee pot that would have like a kickoff switch if it gets overheated. Anything with a kill switch. No microwaves. We do have some in community areas, but we don't allow them to be in the rooms. And so some students have like Keurigs, because they're not like a hot open flame surface. But anything that has that kill switch, we also say that with like power strips, as long as it's got a power overload switch where it's going to kick off if it gets overloaded. We're just trying to avoid the worst, which would be a fire in the residence hall.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions for them? Okay. I think both of you have answered our questions that we were coming with tonight. So
Good. Well, then we did our part.
yes, you did.
Yes.
Now
And
we
honestly, like I would say, and Denisha, you can probably confirm, like throughout the summer, phone lines kind of get crazy, people vacation. All of our offices have a general email. My director and I oversee ours. I'm sure Denisha and one of her counterparts helps oversee theirs. So if you can't get a hold of someone on the phone, I know for our office that residencelife@peace.edu email is the best. And if we can't figure it out over email exchange, we'll set up a time to say, hey, we're available for 15 minutes. Are you available? Make a phone call.
Yeah.
But I've been here for almost 9 years. I've found that throughout the summer, that email is the best, because voicemails get backed up. People are traveling. So, as if you're talking, and if you're talking to other parents or families, let them know that like share that email information. It's typically the best way for us to respond back.
Okay. Okay.
But if anything comes up, feel free to reach out. And if we are not the people, we will connect you with the right person, forward an email along, get you in contact with the right office. Definitely want to be able to be resources to you all.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
Ryan, I've been talking with him since January. So he's been really good to get me in contact with the correct areas that I've had questions, or he'll get the questions answered and send it back to me. So you guys have been great.
Good.
Okay.
As far as one other question is scholarships. I can't even remember what I was trying to say. So most scholarships will come to the school for the financial aid, and you guys will house those funds into an account for them, and then apply for each semester towards what needs to go to. Correct?
So usually what happens is you'll get a letter from the entity, and they send the same letter and check to the university. So financial aid basically looks at it, and we give it to student accounts to apply. So we kind of tell them what the letter said, because they will, in the letter, they're usually kind of specific. They say this can only go for tuition, or the student can use it for miscellaneous or whatever. And we post whatever it says. So if it's $5,000 and they want it over fall and spring, we're going to get 2,500 for fall, 2,500 for spring. And then once that's on there, you might be like, oh, or the student's like, oh, well, I took the loan out. So I want to reduce that loan or cancel a loan or pay myself back because I paid it up front. So if there isn't a bill there, then that money is given back to the student. It's not held because the thought process is either you paid it a different way or you need it for gas or what, other miscellaneous and personal. And that's why that gap is there, to be honest, so that you can't, because there are supplies you're buying, whether mom and dad is buying it or the students, there are costs, right? And we can always adjust. So if we have questions, like I got a scholarship for a student, it was in December. The fall bill was already paid. I'm like, do you want us to put this whole amount on for spring? And they said yes. And we put the whole amount on for spring versus dividing it up. So we try to look at it, work with the family, but sometimes you're expecting it and I put it on my credit card, but I want to, pay that off and pay that back. So again, we kind of work with the student based on in the parameters of whatever that letter said from the donor.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Makes sense. Okay.
And I would say if you are getting them, if possible, when because they're going to ask you, what's the school? Because students change their mind, right? So sometimes on that application, you put X, Y, and Z and you're at ABC. So they're going to ask you the school information and where to send it to. And sometimes they ask if there's a student ID. If you can, put your student's ID number on there because there are multiple similar names of students and, you'd be surprised, to be honest. So that just kind of makes it so much easier if possible. We figure it out, but just, it takes away the doubt of, is this, did they miss a letter when they were typing it up? So things happen. So if possible, put this, give them the student's name and ID number, and that just makes it a little bit easier. And usually, they will tell you around the time they're saying it. It takes us, a couple weeks to get that on. And so you should be able to see that. And there's times we had to track it back, like, ooh, what happened to it? We never got the check and they reissue it. So, it was never cashed. So yeah, we'll work through that.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, you guys did great. Thank you for answering my questions.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
That's provided.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're here throughout the summer if you need anything, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall.
Sounds good. Thank you guys. Have a
All
good
right. Thank y'all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.